Well, hey, everybody, welcome to tonight's webinar. Dan Bissek here from College Aid Pro. Excited to be here to answer any questions that you may have, on anything related to the college process at this point, but also trying to help you navigate your way through this wild and crazy process. So what I'm going to ask you to do is feel free to go ahead and put your questions into the chat box for me, if you would. And again, I will be happy to try to answer those for you. For those of you that are brand new to the MyCap software, I thought it would take a second as everybody's kind of rolling in here to share my screen with you and kind of just walk you through a little bit about what the program looks like and why it's something that you really ought to utilize because quite frankly, it's just a great tool. And it gives you a chance to really dive into the schools a whole lot more and understand a little bit more. So let me share my screen with you here. And so this is just a sample screen that I've put together. The nice thing about this is right up top, it does a great job of explaining to you what your federal, institutional, and consensus expected family contributions are. Now, you may be wondering, why are there three? The difference is this: the federal is based on your FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. But then there are also about 200 other colleges and institutions out there that require you to complete the CSS profile, which then leads to the consensus and the institutional. And the difference between these two is that the institutional does take home equity into consideration in many cases. That's a per school basis as far as what that might look like. Consensus schools often don't. But then, again, every school that you apply to is going to use one of these. And so it's truly about understanding what the dynamics are. So for example, if we look at Stanford University here, for example, and if we let that open up, we'll see that in the additional great details that they give you here that from a financial aid standpoint, they are indeed an institutional college. So for me, it's one of the best things about the program is the ability to be able to dive in here and really see all the particulars on the colleges. Plus, the other thing is, let's open up like the University of Alabama here. University of Alabama is known for recruiting students all across the United States. And so because of that, they also give a lot of scholarship money away. And in fact, you can see in our example here of the family I've put in here that this student qualifies for $24,000. You may be looking at this initial price tag and going, wow, $50,000 is a lot of cost out of state. But, then you drop it down by that merit scholarship that the student receives. And it could be comparable to an in-state school where maybe you're not going to get any merit scholarships. But again, that's because they're also strictly a FAFSA school. And so that makes life a little easier. The cool thing about the program is it also gives you some additional details here, like the total need that's met. In other words, if you have a financial need, how that works out. Also, the percentage of students who don't have financial need or who are receiving some merit aid. And that's a big number, 33.8% of the incoming freshmen. I mean, that's huge. The other thing I want to show you that I'm real excited about is something brand new that we've just added to this, which is what we call our merit aid transparency. In other words, we give every college in our ranking a grade. In this case, the University of Alabama is very transparent with their merit aid. It's really easy to understand what you will get or not get. And so it's a grade A that you're receiving there, or that they receive. But then you can see the reason being is, look down here. Look at all these scholarships that students are eligible to receive. And in this particular case, we're projecting that this student would get a University of Alabama scholarship, which is for $24,000. Again, the results of this are all dependent upon you, the student, and what you bring to the table, whether or not the school, for the most competitive scholarships, for example, still uses test scores and all those kinds of things. So again, just a great tool that we have, but I would encourage you to use it. The one thing I think is a no-brainer for sure, if you've got the free version, which is the 3 colleges, you can upgrade that, for $149, and then you get access to all the colleges and just all the great information that we can provide you. All right, so let me stop sharing my screen here. I'll tell you what, I'll just leave this open. It's not a big deal, but let me take a look at what some of our questions are here. I can't find the MIT on your software. Well, it's because you have to look under Massachusetts. And so let's do that. In fact, let me just show you here. All you have to do is go to the search here and type in, if I can spell it right. And there we go. See it right here? We've got Massachusetts Institute of Technology right there. And so that's all you got to do. It makes it pretty easy. How do we get the information about the GPA and test scores associated with some of the merit scholarships that are listed? Well, again, as I showed you, it actually provides those details in here. So if we go back to our dashboard again, and if we go into the more information tab here, then you're going to see down at the bottom that that kind of information is listed. There's the GPA, there's the test scores that they're looking for in these cases. Now, in this day and age of test optional, it is possible that a school, may not require test scores. But I can tell you that in the most competitive scholarships for colleges, you almost always see that there's some kind of a need to submit either an ACT or an SAT. And by the way, it doesn't have to be both, of course. It can be either one, but that's just something to keep in mind there. Let's see. You can talk about using the tool now that all the applications are sent and FAFSA is filled out. What comes back from the schools and how do I plug that into the tool? No, that's a great question. Let's assume, and that's what I'm going to do here, is I'm going to assume that you actually did the upgrade to the software. And by doing that, what you've done is that you've given yourself some other great resources to look at. So let's kind of walk through a couple of things. The first thing that you want to see down here is, these are the 1-year numbers that the school is projected to cost. And you can see there's pretty significant differences here, right? Look at what Stanford is compared to Alabama, compared to UCLA. Wow, look at that number, right? The net cost is $70,000. Well, the reason, of course, there is because my particular family I put in here, the student's not going to get any merit aid and isn't going to receive any need-based aid. With these other schools, as I already showed you with Alabama, the student received merit aid. And with Stanford, this same family received all kinds of need-based aid. And that's why these numbers can be as close as they are. But we take it a step further and we show you additional details, okay? So if we go into the affordability conversation, look at this. Now we're going to take those same details that we've provided you and we break it into even more information. So for example, with the University of Alabama, we end up with a shortfall of about $34,242, assuming that what we have here is that this family is able to provide about $20,000 per year to help their son or daughter go to school. And then what it does is it just breaks that down. It says, okay, well, we've got this amount of loans that we need to take out to fill the gap, assuming that's how we're going to cover that gap, by the way. Under a traditional 10-year repayment plan, that means that you will pay a total of $45,623 over that span of time, or $380 a month. There's also the income-based repayment programs that maybe you've heard of. And that's a case where it's $221 a month. And it's actually truly based on the income. So what happens is a student has to submit their tax return every year. And then the lender, the federal government in this case, would recalculate how much needs to be paid. But you can see over that span of time, you're paying quite a bit more. You started with 34 and we're up to 66. And then the other thing that we show you, I'm using a computer and information science major here, that we're saying that this student is going to, have about $4,108 a month that can be used for things like this. But again, it's just a great way to work through that. In addition to that, you can compare the colleges. So in this case, I've only listed Stanford University, but as you start getting offers in, you'll be able to plug this kind of information in here. So if we wanted to edit this, you could, for example, upload your offer, your financial aid award offer letter. In other words, give you one place to be able to hold on to all this stuff. And then we know what the cost of attendance is, but maybe they've given you more specific numbers. But look, we can put our need-based grants, our scholarships that the student has received. Are you going to, take out the student loan, the federal direct student loan, which is $5,500? Is any portion of that subsidized or is it all unsubsidized? And what it does is it subtracts these kinds of things off of that original $81,000. Why is that important? Because you know what? We want you to be able to get to the end, which is, okay, how are you going to pay for college? So that you can stack these colleges side by side to be able to clearly communicate as a family what is the best choice for the family financially, okay? I understand that there's going to be a lot of conversations about the academic fit, but I believe that financial fit has to be the number one item that you talk about. And so this gives you a great tool to be able to do that, to be able to put everything together so that you've got one area to be able to compare the numbers. So I hope that helped to answer your question there. Let's see here. Question is, I'm getting divorced, but we haven't split the 401k assets yet. I assume that will count against me as they are in my name. Well, so remember that with the FASBA, you do not have to do anything as far as putting the retirement accounts asset values in. You're putting in non-retirement assets. And even with the CSS profile, yes, they're going to ask you about your portion of the assets compared to your ex-spouse's information. But even in that case, and by the way, unfortunately, this year, they're requiring you to do this. They're actually forcing you to put in your retirement values into the account. We still don't know exactly why. I mean, other than they're kind of sizing you up as a family. So those assets will not count as a resource to pay for college. At least they shouldn't, in our opinion. But they do require you to put that down. So you should still be okay. The other thing is I have a loan from my 401k that I need to pay back. Will it have much impact if I do it now or next year from a financial aid perspective? I make about $280,000 per year. Honestly, again, it's not going to matter. So that's, just so that you know. What do I put for month and year separated? That's up to you. I mean, when did you guys officially separate? You said, is it when he moved out, when he signed the separation agreement? Divorce papers aren't signed until next year. So worst case scenario, it's when he moved out. You could absolutely use that as that type of situation. Let's see here. Follow-up question, what is the source of this information? So we're using Peterson's to be able to work through this. I mean, that's where all of our specific details are coming from, is this Peterson's. And so yeah, that's our resource. Plus, we've got a team of people that do an incredible job of going and searching the scholarships, for example. As you can imagine, it's an ever-changing world out there. And so we've got a team of people that they do an incredible job of going to do that and keeping up with that. Let's see, we just realized we could qualify for some financial aid after submission for early action schools, saying we won't apply for financial aid. Shall we contact the school to change that or just send the FAFSA and the CSS profile? Well, you're probably going to still want to let them know that now you are trying to apply for financial aid. It's one of those things where, they're going to need to know so that they're taking into consideration. Not to mention, are you applying to schools that are need aware, meaning that they use that as part of their decision when it comes to financial aid, admissions? In other words, if you're saying that you need financial aid, is that going to come into play? It could. And so just be careful about that. Do your research, make the phone calls. I call it making the Columbo phone call, where you're going in incognito and trying to work through that. Let's see here. My federal EFC on the MyCap isn't matching what the FASBA has. Assume the FASBA is correct because they have my actual tax returns. Well, there's no doubt if you use just projections of what you put into the MyCap, it's very possible that those numbers could be off. I mean, I've seen it to where it can be off, a couple $100. If it's more than that, it's probably because they got into more nitty gritty, because remember, we're asking for your gross income when we have you plug numbers into the MyCap versus they're using your adjusted gross income. They're giving you credit for the amount that you paid in taxes, plus they're adding back in your 401k contributions. I mean, there's just a lot more dynamics that are coming into play with that. But something tells me it's still at least prepared you for the inevitable. I'm hoping that in this case that your FASBA EFC was lower, but if it was higher, that again would also come into the value of assets on the day that you completed it and those kinds of things. Let's see, I completed the FAFSA, but now the platform is saying my son needs to complete a section. How does he get his FAFSA login password? You guys should have set that up from the beginning. Everybody to do your FAFSA needs to have an FSA ID. So the student needs to have an FSA ID, and mom or dad, one of you need to have an FSA ID so that you can complete that, because you have to sign it electronically at the end. Now, I will tell you, any of you that are trying to get in there for an 11/15 deadline, There is no way, if you're trying to do it tonight, that you're going to get your FSA ID completed in time, because it takes 3 to as much as I've seen it 5 days or longer to get that FSA ID verified by the Social Security Administration. So just get prepared, because again, that's going to be an issue, something that you might have to deal with. But assuming you've got your FSA ID, then you should be able to log in. In fact, when you go to the FAFSA initially, a parent, you can sign it as a parent completing the FAFSA for the student, where you put in the first name, last name, their date of birth, and their Social Security number, and it will let you into the system to be able to work on it. For CSS Profile, under the parent expenses, one of the questions asked is if the student's parents have any medical expenses not covered by insurance. Can I put my medical insurance as deductible? I have high deductible amount under this category. Well, what they're really looking for, if you click on the question mark, it'll tell you what they allow for that. That's what you want to do, is read that. But one of the parameters that I often use is, were your medical expenses that you had to pay, which could, by the way, be that deductible amount, at least 3% of your gross earnings. So use that kind of a parameter to try to figure it out. As to whether or not they're really going to look at it, and consider it. Let's see, I have a sophomore in college and have previously filled out the FAFSA CSS profile and have answered all the questions thinking they were mandatory, like retirement, et cetera. This year, can I leave those questions blank, or for continuity purposes, should I answer them all again? I don't want to make it my financial aid package decrease because I don't answer the questions this year. Also, what about when my other daughter applies, or she's a junior now, and I leave blank on hers, but answer all the questions on my current for my current college student? Look, it's a personal call. We say that you don't need to fill out the questions that are not required, okay, when you're doing this. And quite frankly, it's because they ask some questions that really isn't any of their business. In fact, up to this year, they didn't ask you for the values in your retirement accounts, and I still don't like the fact that they do. But the fact is, it's your call. You get to decide what you're going to fill in or not. If you're getting the EBGBs by the fact that you answered them last year, but you're thinking I'm not doing it this year, then you make the call. You can go ahead and give them whatever amount of information that you want to, and in the future as well. And by the way, don't be surprised if they do more things like adding more required questions. Comparing FAFSA and CSS profile scores prior to application. How can we do this with the software? Well, again, it's real easy, because again, as I said, if you open up the more information, so go to the dashboard, and then if you open up the more information tab, it will always show you down in the financial aid tab what type of EFC that they're going to use, or what kind of form they're using to do their EFC basis. So it'll say whether it's a federal, whether it's a CSS profile, or whether it's an institutional. So that will absolutely help you in those cases. For the non-custodial parent filling out the CSS profile, what type of follow-up should I expect from the school? What type of documentation could they ask me to send them? As far as follow-up, I mean, the biggest thing that they're going to do with the CSS profiles, there are going to be certain colleges that are going to ask for additional financial aid, or excuse me, tax information or things like that. They might ask for the non-custodial parents' 2021 tax return, W-2, those types of things, just like they might for the custodial parent. They also may ask the same things for your students, so be prepared for that. Okay, let's see here. In section 10, oh, now you're testing me here. In section 10 of the CSS profile, like in pre-approval, it asks for what we can contribute each year. Yes, it does. Is it best to be realistic as possible or lowball? If we lowball, what is the likelihood of more need-based aid? Or would we be less attractive because we would be contributing so little? So here's the deal. Definitely don't overshoot. I had a conversation with a family today where they were concerned about not putting enough down. And look, I get that. Again, if a school is need aware, they're going to take that into consideration, okay? It's very possible they will. However, you also don't want to overshoot. I mean, if you give them a high number, you can't unsee what they've seen, or they can't unsee what they've seen. So if you say that you can cover $85,000 and the price is $85,000, then what do you think they're going to expect you to pay? Now, there are some limitations. If they do indeed or if they're need blind, which means they're going to process your financial aid forms and then determine how much it is. But the point is, everybody has an expected family contribution, and the colleges are going to dictate to you how much they think you should pay. Do you have the ability to go back in and appeal later? Absolutely. That's something you want to continue with us down the road, because we will be talking about appeals, as we continue to get closer to when those financial aid offers are coming in. When additional financial aid questionnaires ask for balances of assets, do we use current balances even though we are using 2021 tax return? Great question. The answer is yes. You have to remember that the income is always based on 2 years prior. So that's coming off your tax return, which includes any contributions that you put into your 401k plan, versus the fact that the assets are based on the day that you submit the financial aid forms. So whatever you've got in cash checking savings, non-retirement vehicles, those kinds of details is what they're looking for. And unfortunately, on the CSS profile, it's the value of your retirement accounts on that day as well. Trying to update the FAFSA to delete and add additional universities. My daughter's having problems. When entering the FSA ID and password, she's getting a warning that the information is incorrect and we will get locked out after 3 attempts. Yeah, that does happen. What do you do? Well, number one, I would really check the username and password. Sometimes you can type in the email instead of the username. But you really have to be specific on that password to be able to do it. One of the things you could do is you could back out and go and check your FSA ID. So you can go to logging into the FSA ID itself and see if the username and or email and password that she uses works. It'll let you go through the process. So that could be an alternative where you can check it before locking yourself out. If you do lock yourself out, then you're going to have to wait, and it could be as much as 24 hours before you have the ability to get back in again and work on that document. So I know it's a big deal because you're probably trying to take some colleges out and replace them with some new, but just realize that that's a problem, or it could be a problem. As far as the FAFSA, I have rental properties that have some equity, but they are for my retirement. Doesn't matter. Okay, and I could never sell them to pay for my son's college. How do schools count for that? They don't. They look at the fact that your rental properties are, well, in the case of the deal, I guess it depends on how you also own those rental properties. Are those properties owned in an LLC? Are they a business, a true business? Because at least this year, they don't count as an asset on the financial aid forms from the FAFSA standpoint. But from the CSS profile, you will absolutely have to list those and give it an equity value to those. How do schools count them? Okay, we've talked about that. To me, these are retirement. I know that I understand that you consider them retirement assets, but the colleges consider them part of your assets. And so that's, again, it depends 100% on how you own those rental properties. With all the schools I submitted in your website, it looks like we would get more new need-based aid from more highly ranked REACH schools than targets and safety schools. Why is that? Well, it's real simple. Public schools in particular, especially if they're out of state, give most of their need-based aid to in-state students. The other thing is, it depends on what your EFC is. If your EFC is, say it's $25,000 and the cost of a school is $65,000, and if the school's known for giving a lot of need-based aid out, then that's why you're seeing the fact that they're covering a significant portion of that need. And that's, again, where you want to get back into, and I'm kind of showing it here again on the situation behind me here, that, this school covers 81.1% of the need, okay? But they only cover 2.8% of non-need-based merit aid. So that's, again, why it's important that you understand the specifics on those colleges. And that's why that school is probably coming in that way, or the schools are coming in that way. With all the schools I submitted in your website, it looks like we would get news, more highly ranked REACH schools than target and safety schools. Again, that's the same type of situation. Sorry, I think I already answered that. All right. If we do an early withdrawal from an IRA and pay the penalty, how will that affect us as far as income? Will it be counted towards income? Well, I mean, it's going to, if you're paying taxes on it, it's an early distribution. And so it will generate a tax form for you. So it's probably going to show up on the front of your tax return, which means you're going to need to have an additional conversation with the colleges to make them aware that, hey, this was a one-time distribution that took place. Don't penalize me for it. Now, the other thing that you're likely not going to want to do is next year, when you're ready to fill out the financial aid forms, to just do the IRS data retrieval tool, because it will also likely bump you, for that event. So make sure that you have a conversation with the financial aid officers. I don't know what year your student is in, so I can't, fully answer that based on that. On the FAFSA, I've already submitted my 10 schools and it's been processed. What if I want to add an 11th school? Do I have to delete one of the schools I've already submitted? The answer is yes, but here's the deal. You need to first contact one of your other colleges to make sure that they've downloaded your FAFSA. Just because you put them in there does not mean that the school has downloaded it. In fact, I will tell you, one of my families today I was talking to, and they discovered that the college isn't, which by the way is a pretty common case, isn't going to even start working on the financial aid until after January the 1st. But you better make sure that they've actually downloaded that FAFSA before you remove them and replace them with a new school. So that's a phone call that has to be made to the financial aid office. I normally suggest that you wait a week or two if you can to make that call, because by then they should have it. I'm divorced. The CSS asks for an anticipated contributions towards students' educational costs from my ex-wife. It also asks for me, what is your recommendation for those responses? Well, I don't know how you could possibly know what she's going to pay unless you've got a good relationship with her. And even then, I don't think I would be answering that question for her. I think I would let her do that on her own CSS profile, because she'll be doing it as a non-custodial parent and be putting her own number down. So I wouldn't worry about it. So I put 0 there, I guess is my point. How late can we apply for scholarships during and after the application process? It totally depends on the schools. I mean, if you're talking merit-based scholarships for the schools, some are automatic based on the initial application that you put in. Others have specific deadlines. University of Louisville, for example, has a December 15th deadline, but you only find out about these scholarships after you've submitted the application and been admitted to the school, or in the process of being admitted to the school to be able to know about that. So it depends on every single school. And also, I will tell you this, there are private scholarships out there right now and all the way through the time that your student is in college, for that matter. But the biggest months are February, March, and April for you to be able to pursue those. In the CSS profile, if the student has an UTMA in his name, do we only add the balance to the student's assets balance and not to the parents? That is correct. It's considered your student's asset, not mom and dad's. Do we also include the siblings' UTMA balances? No, I wouldn't in that particular case. Just, they absolutely need the student's asset value because they're looking for the student's assets. The available merit scholarships on their Loyal isn't updated with what my child received. Okay, well, that's good to know. Love to know what that is. If you want to email me at danb@collegeaidpro.com, I'd love to know what that is so I can pass that up. How do I put a custom amount in? Well, remember, on that whole affordability thing, you've got the ability to plug those numbers in there. You can plug in the merit awards received, the student loans, however you're planning on paying it. So you actually have the ability to put that in there. In case you didn't see that earlier, let me go back here for a second. I'll kind of show that to you if I can. Let's see here. So in the compare and appeal, you've got the ability here to go in and edit. And specifically, you've got the ability to plug in like the appeal letter that was received, or excuse me, the financial aid offer letter that was received, and then plug in specifics on like the cost of attendance, need-based grants, merit scholarship amount that the student received, as well as any federal loans that are available. So you can just plug those things in and then you're good to go. Okay. Let's see. I plan to finish the FAFSA tonight ahead of the 11/15 deadline. Do I also need to do the CSS profile ahead of that date? The answer is, if you're applying for an 11/15 school, yes, you have to do both. If they expect you to submit both, that's something you would have to know from the schools that the student is applying to. What documents should we have gathered for a one-on-one meeting with one of you? Any questions and any worries or things that you have, because we can absolutely talk through it with you. I don't know, what grade level your student is. If they're a senior and you're looking for some specifics, then having some financial details would be great. Not to mention, if you've already filled in the MyCap program, we have the ability to actually tap into that and then look at those details with you. So, just whatever you think you need to bring that's going to be pertinent to the financial conversation. A couple of schools really encouraged me to use the IRS data retrieval tool, even though I already submitted. I followed Peg's advice to enter manual. Personally, I love entering it manually. Don't worry about the fact that they say, that you use the IRS data retrieval tool. Remember, they're like Lemos following an order with all the other protocols out there. Here's the reason. I had a case not too long ago here where one of my clients decided to use the IRS data retrieval tool, and it dramatically messed up, is the best way to put it, his expected family contribution. They're a family that should not have had a $339,000 per year EFC. And it's 100% because the system did not take into consideration that they'd rolled over some IRAs, which, 401ks, okay, they did it legitimately, but the system didn't recognize that, and it nailed them with a ridiculous EFC. So don't worry about it. Use, the fact that you put it in manually is absolutely fine. Sorry, this has been extensively covered, but I'm still not clear on how to determine the market value of your home. Okay, so there's all kinds of different methods. Some people go to Zillow, others go to the federal index, the federal index that's out there that you can tap into. You have to know that it really, the one area that's not going to work is for those of you that think you can use your local tax statement as far as what they think your house should be taxed at. That's not going to work. It's absolutely based on what the value is. And as we use in our illustration, we believe that you should take a 15% to 20% discount off that rate, because of the fact that if you've got to do a fire sale, an immediate sale of the house, and we're going to take cash for it, that you're probably not going to get as much as you usually would. And so, especially now that the interest rates have been going up, housing prices are coming down in some cases as far as what people are getting, instead of multiple offers on houses, there are changes going on with some of that, unless you're in a particular area that's just still real crazy. But that's what I would suggest to you, is just make sure that you do that and be realistic. If you know that you're putting a number down that's super duper low, give them a fair number. Just realize the colleges, if they want to know the number, they're going to recalculate it anyway and tell you what it should be. My EFC from the Fed is 15,000 higher than my cap. I didn't have a rollover, didn't use DRT, wondering how your algorithm differs. Honestly, that's a conversation that's much deeper than what we can cover tonight. I just don't know what you plugged in to know, what those details are, to help you there. Is it advised to reduce free cash accounts by paying credit card bills prior to the application? Maybe, but you do have to know this. The number one contributor to your expected family contribution is your mom and dad's income. So your adjusted gross income is going to be the number one contributor. So before you ever start paying off other things, specifically thinking I'm going to dramatically reduce my cash accounts, just know that it may have a very little impact on your total EFC. Run the numbers, use the MyCap calculator, it'll help you with that. While asking for 1040 line by line information in the CSS profile, it does not ask for line 8, profit loss from Schedule C, sole proprietorship. Only report what they tell you to report. That's my answer. Don't get caught up in the weeds. If they're not asking for it, don't put it down. Non-owned as an LLC, are now owned as an LLC. I assume this is the one that's talking about the rental properties earlier. Well, if you're in an LLC, you're protected on the FASBA, but you're not on the CSS profile. Those properties will still have to be reported, and you're going to have to deal with the details as far as giving them, the equity position and things like that. And by the way, in the future, the FASBA is also going to ask for those numbers on next year's return. My son lives with me 50% of the time, and I provide more overall support. So I am listing myself as the custodial parent. I agree with that. I live in the next town over from where he goes to school, and in his applications, we have listed his mom's address. Several places asking for addresses in the CSS. Is it important to keep this consistent? You're still going to need to list, of course, your custodial address, your parent address. It really doesn't, because you know what, they understand that students float between both households. So I don't see that as being a problem. How and when will we find out what we are actually getting from the FASBA? Well, number one, I don't know if you realize this, but as soon as you hit submit, the next form that comes up and says, congratulations, you've officially submitted your FAFSA, is that just down on that page, it goes ahead and shows you what your expected family contribution is. So that's the first starting point. If your EFC is as much as the colleges that your son or daughter is applying to, then you're going to get nothing. But what they will show you right there on the page is they'll say that you're going to qualify, or your student's going to qualify for the $5,500 federal direct Stafford loan. After that, you're going to have to wait until the spring to get the official financial aid offer letters that are going to come in from each of the colleges, and they'll all send those in. When it comes to merit scholarships, that's a per school basis. Some schools let you know that you've been accepted to a school, and oh, by the way, here's the scholarship that you've received. It's all about those deadlines and how they handle those things. Non-custodial parent refuses to submit the CSS profile for a school that requires the CSS profile from the custodial and non-custodial parents. I do not want to ask for a waiver, as the waiver is extremely invasive. If only custodial parents submit, what is the repercussions? It's real simple. If you don't give them what they want, then they'll kick out your student's application. So you're going to have to go and give them either the waiver, where you're going to prove to them why the other parent is not willing to cooperate, or you're going to have to try to convince that person to do what they need to do. My son is about to apply early action to Marist. I hadn't completed the CSS profile yet. Can he apply before I send the profile? Is the deadline? You're going to have to do your own research on that. You got to check and see. And look, if you miss the deadline, I would make it a point to call that school tomorrow and explain that, hey, we didn't get it in time. We just didn't realize, or whatever. So they could be sympathetic to your situation, but make sure that you actually try to get it done if you can. Will you get a recording of this webinar or the Zoom? Yes, I'm pretty sure that that's going to be sent out to you. It's being recorded right now, just so you know. So you have to call each university to verify if they've received the FAFSA information before you add the next 10 universities. That's absolutely correct. I was told the FAFSA can be used to attend university from overseas. Some colleges, yes. I'm going to take a drink here. Hang on. Some schools over there do allow you to use the FAFSA specifically for getting the federal loans. It's not that you're going to get anything else. And then how do you include this? Well, you just go in and you type the school's name into the FAFSA, and it should be able to pull it up. Did I understand you correctly that the FAFSA and CSS need to be submitted tonight by 11:59 p.m. to make the 11:15 deadline? You did not. I didn't say that at all. Somebody said that they were working on it today. For you to get it in by 11:15, you got to get it done by tomorrow. It's 11:15. So just make sure that you work on that and get it finished. It's important that you that you meet those deadlines. Am I able to unlock the FAFSA every year, or is it locked once you submit? The FAFSA, you can always get in there and do corrections. You've got the ability to do that at any time. So, it's all about hopping in there and finishing those details. And then most importantly, just making sure without a doubt that you keep your FSA IDs both this year and next year. Don't lose them, so that you've got the ability to hop back in there. But you can make corrections, you can add schools, you can do all kinds of things to the FAFSA. Now, CSS profile is a different beast. CSS profile is a case where you are unfortunately stuck. They claim that sometime here on the 20th or sometime around that they're going to give us the opportunity to do one correction, a one-time correction. But I even received an email from the CSS profile people because I asked them about that. But I just don't know for sure if that's going to come through. They claim, but they could also change the rules. Okay, we submitted this FAFSA in time, but didn't realize one of our son's colleges asked for an additional financial form and the CSS. We're able to get the college's form in, but are still trying to get the CSS information together. Our son submitted his applications all ahead of schedule, which was great for him, but caught us off guard. Will our CSS being late work against him? Should we call their financial aid department? I would call their financial aid department just to explain the circumstances, and hopefully you'll get someone that's sympathetic to your situation and willing to, to say, okay, well, this applications have been submitted, but they are going to expect that it gets turned around very quickly. And don't forget, it just depends on the deadlines. There were November 1st deadlines with colleges that had both admissions and financial aid deadlines, both on the same date. Believe me, we were busting our butt trying to help families get those things done. Same thing's coming up here on the 15th. Same thing will be coming up here on December the 1st and December the 15th. I mean, it just depends on the individual school. So, just make sure that you make that phone call and explain your circumstances and see what they say. So should I go ahead and contact each school about how our income was reported for 2021 taxes is now significantly reduced and start that paperwork, or should I wait until the spring to see what I'm awarded? I think you ought to wait. Let them process their financial aid offers, and then make sure that you are ready to do your appeal based on having the facts. Now you got to know that's what they're going to be looking for. Is they're going to be looking for the facts. It can't just be feelings, that you feel like you should get more money or whatever. It's got to be the facts that you're going to provide to them. Each of our kids has $7,000 in I assume a 529 plan. 2 kids will be applying at the same time in the fall of 2023. How do we address this on the FAFSA? Well, if you read it, if you read the letter of the law when it comes to the FAFSA, it says that you're supposed to list all assets that are in mom and dad's name, which means you've got 3 kids with 3 529 plans. Those assets should all be listed for all 3 of those children. Do we report the full 21,000? Yes, I would say that you do. Yeah, just put the full 21,000. Remember, it's an asset you're the custodian for the benefit of your children. And so just put that total amount down. Can the non-custodial parent access the custodial parent FAFSA submission for a college app? The only way that's going to happen is if somebody gives them access with the username and password, which would be your student. And so if I were you, I'd have a pretty serious conversation with your child and say, hey, this is not going to happen. You're not going to share my information with the non-custodial parent. So as long as that username and password is not shared, there shouldn't be any problem with that. Not to mention, you have to know, I mean, your student is receiving what's called a SAR, Student Aid Report, which is a breakdown of all the information that was provided on that FAFSA. And I guess if they were, a troublemaker, they could share that with the non-custodial parent. I'm not recommending that by any chance, okay? But I'm just telling you, it's a form that's sent to them because it's there. You have to remember this. The FAFSA and the CSS profile are your students' FAFSA and CSS profile. They're not yours, mom and dad. And so while you're doing all the work, I know you are, the truth of the matter is they're the ones that are, receiving the documentation, and they're the ones that are going to ultimately make the decision as far as with you, of course, whether they're going to take out the loans and things like that. So it's something to keep in mind. All right. Believe it or not, I think I got through most of those. Let me go back to the top and see if there were any others. You can still add them if you want to. I'm not sure if I missed anything. If I did, I apologize. I've been trying to keep up with them, as we've been going along here. But I think I did a pretty good job, folks. See, we've got a couple more since I started up to look at this, but I'm going to go to the top and just see. Let's see here. Nope, I think we're looking pretty good. All right. So let's go down here to the bottom. Let's see if I can pick up where I just left off. I don't know what you're saying here. Sorry, I may have missed your answer to my second question. Don't know what your second question was. You says when you're answering a previous question about having $7,000 per child in a college account, it sounded like you added the $21,000 to the parents' assets. That's correct. Well, the reason being is they said they had 3 kids with $7,000 apiece in their 529 plans. That's $21,000. So I thought that any custodial account in the child's name is not included in the parents. We're talking about 529 plans. So 529 plans in that case are considered an asset of mom and dad's, not the students. Now, UTMAs and UDMAs of your student, meaning you're the custodial parent of their checking account or their savings account, that is considered an asset of the child. And that's what has to be put down, is that asset has to be put down as the child's number or information. That makes sense? Hope that answered your question. Don't mean to confuse you, but that's 529s are always considered an asset of the parents. Those kiddo checking accounts and savings accounts are always the student's assets. With all the schools I submitted in your website, it looks like we would get more news. More need-based aid from more higher ranked reach. Actually, I did answer that. I specifically said that it's very possible that in your situation that you're going to qualify for more money at those schools. You have to know something. The more highly selective colleges, the reach schools, things like that, sometimes they are often the ones that are the most generous when it comes to any need-based aid. They may cover 100% of need-based aid, or 85% of need-based aid. And so that's why those higher schools could indeed be lower or be a realistic expense. However, what's the challenge with those schools? It's getting in. It's your students' ability to get admitted to those schools. And so there's no way to know that. We can't predict that, of course, in our program, but all we can do is we can take your numbers and show you where things stand when it comes to either need-based or merit-based consideration for your student based on the facts that you put in there. So that's why that comes in there. Do they really look at your estimates for 2023 income or weighted heavily from the CSS? So it's interesting. What he's asking about here is in the CSS profile, they say, okay, well, you've already given us your 2021 information, income information. Give us a projection of what 2022 is going to end up being, and then also give us a projection of 2023. You know what? I often say just keep the same number year after year. If you think there's going to be any significant change going down, then you absolutely want to report that. And, that could be something that you're going to need to address with them in the future without a doubt, because that's the unfortunate side of looking at tax returns from 2 years prior, is it doesn't show your current state of affairs. And that's why you've got to be prepared to have a conversation with those schools to make them aware of what's going on. So that's a good question. So if I personally, not an LLC, own a condo that's fully paid off and it is being rented out, do I need to include the market value of that condo as an asset? You better believe you do. That is considered an asset. And unfortunately, 100% of that equity is money that you, quote unquote, should be able to spend on college, and they expect you to list that. Whether that's the FAFSA or the CSS profile, it's required to be down there for both. My daughter said she received an email that the college had received her FAFSA before she deleted the school to add another one. Good for you. That's great. Is that sufficient, or should we still contact the school to confirm they received the FAFSA? I don't know what the letter looks like. I've never personally seen one of those letters. I still think I would make the call to ask, just to be safe, because you don't want to mess up something like one of her price schools that she really, really, really wants to get into, and you discover that somehow the FAFSA processing didn't take place. That would be a real bummer. Does the 529 plan values need to be fully reported on the FAFSA and CSS profile, or do we need to divide that value by 4 since the value is, no, it's the full value. You have to put the full value of that total down. Remember, it's the value of those assets sitting in that account right now. So as of the day that you submit the financial aid forms. Let's see. Just to be sure, where should sibling UTMA balances be listed in the CSS? Well, so in that form, the question is whether it's required, by the way, but they may ask if, of a sibling, because they do ask about siblings. They ask what school they go to, what grade levels they're in. They may ask, I just can't remember off the top of my head, whether they ask about siblings' assets, if they've got anything in their own checking or savings and things like that. Quite frankly, I don't think it's any of their business. I mean, I really don't. So it's your judgment call, especially if it's not required, don't put it down. I am not sure you answered my second question. Okay. When I fill out FAFSA CSS for my rising senior in college and answer all questions I previously answered in previous years, no, actually I did. I said that it's your call. Okay, it's your call. You get to decide whether or not you're going to put the same answers down or not. We believe that you shouldn't put down all of the, the non-required answers. but it's still your call. Remember, it's your FAFSA, it's your CSS profile. And so if you decide that you don't want to fill in certain questions, as long as they're not required, that's your call. If you want to fill those in, that's your call again. I did the FAFSA for my son, but didn't know my son also needed an ID. I will have him get one. Yeah, you got to do that tonight. You absolutely got to get on that and then be prepared. It gives us an option to submit the form now and have him sign it later. Is that okay to do? I mean, you can just realize it's going to delay the process. You know, the beauty part about electronic signatures and electronic submission is that they've got it, you know, the Department of Education gets it, or, you know, to be able to process that right away. And so for you to have to sign that document and send it in is, well, you know how the Postal Service is now, you know what that's going to be like. So just be prepared for that. But yes, you could. The MyCap op shows anticipated scholarships for each school. Do these require action on the parent or student's part, or assumed to be automatically provided by the school? Actually, if you look at the details, it'll show you in the college pages whether or not those scholarships are guaranteed, you know, are they competitive? Actually, let me show you, give me an example here if I can. I'm going to try to get the system to open up for me. Let's see who I opened up here. Excuse me. So when we're looking down here, you're going to find that in some cases, there's going to be information that's like, you know, here's an example. This is for out-of-state students only, in-state students. This is for students that are national merits semifinalists and so forth. And so it's going to depend on the schools. There are definitely going to be some schools where you're going to see that it's a competitive scholarship where there may be an additional application that has to be completed, and you know, details that you need to put in there, and extra essays, letters of recommendation, all those kinds of things. So you're just going to need to look at those scholarships in more detail. In other words, what I would suggest that you do is use the link that takes you to the website and see if there's any additional requirements. But hopefully your student applies for the school. They may have like a separate essay that has to be done within the Common App essay for that school. You know, that's a supplemental essay, but that might be all that's necessary to qualify. If the parent goes to grad school at the same time as a child does it impact a child's FAFSA? It does not. Unfortunately, it doesn't. They don't care about a parent going through. They strictly care about the student's situation. Email for FAFSA uses personal email address, while the Common App uses high school email. Will that be okay? There's no interconnection between the two. However, I always suggest that you use a personal email for all the financial aid forms and for applying to the colleges in the future. And there's a reason for this. What happens to that student's email when they graduate? You got it, it gets turned off. And so it's much better for you to have your own individual student's personal email to be used for all that in the future. Let's see here. My husband and I were unemployed during COVID, and because my state was behind in unemployment benefit payments, I had to withdraw one-time $100,000 from a 401k. I'm paying taxes on this, and my state caught up with our 2020 payments in 2021. Okay. So yeah, if you're talking, so there's a point here. You've got the ability to, again, appeal to the colleges so that they understand what's going on. This again would be a situation where I would absolutely manually put in your own information to the FAFSA. I'm not sure if you're applying also to CSS profile schools, but you're definitely going to want to have a conversation with the financial aid office about your personal situation there. Okay. I know this is tough to answer, but with an income of 250,000, assets over 200,000, are you basically out of the running for need-based aid? Don't know. I mean, the issue is it depends on the individual schools. So what I'm suggesting to you is that you go ahead and plug the numbers into the MyCap and see what your EFC comes up with. You know, what's your FAFSA look like compared to your CSS profile numbers? You might be surprised. Okay. Do colleges insist that you use all savings up front to pay for college? We have a finite amount of money in an UTMA that we will not be able to reimburse once it's all gone. Will we be able to divide balance between 4 years, or do we have to use all the funds in year one? It's totally up to you. I mean, how you handle that. Okay. Um, it's one of the things that you need to know is that when it comes to, for example, the federal student loans that are available to your students, it's a use it or lose it every single year. And what I mean by that is you only get a chance to use, you have to use or lose the $5,500 the freshman year, $6,500 the sophomore year, $7,500 the junior year, $7,500 the senior year. And so if it turns out that you don't use the $5,500 the first year, it does not roll to the next year. So that's why I say it's a use it or lose it. So in your particular case, depending upon how you think you're going to pay for the latter years, it may be better for you to take out that $5,500 loan up front, to help stretch that money a little bit further. But that's, again, a conversation that you need to have as far as sitting down and planning out. Remember, it's going to be a 4-year plan. That's why the affordability side of our program is such a good thing. It'll help you there. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate you coming tonight for saying thank you. Any other questions? Happy to answer it. Okay, I'm going to go back up because I'm being told that I'm not totally understanding a question that was asked. So I'm going to try to do this again. I'm going to do my best here. Okay. I'm not sure that I'm going to answer it any differently than I did before, but we'll give it a shot. But I got to figure out where the heck it is here. Okay, I'm going to read this again. I have a sophomore at college and have previously filled out the FAFSA CSS profile and answered all the questions thinking they were mandatory, like retirement. Okay, that's fine. This year, can I leave those questions blank, or for continuity purposes, should I answer them all again? Don't want to make my aid package decrease because I don't answer the questions this year. Also, what about when my other daughter applies high school junior now? Can I leave blank on hers, but answer all the questions on my current college student? Again, as I have already explained, it's your call. You're asking me to sit in the office of your student's financial aid office, and I'm not. Okay, I don't know what questions they're going to look at compared to what you put down next year, because I have no idea what you put down last year. And so the fact of the matter is, go with your gut. There's nothing wrong with you putting the answers down. Okay, if you choose to go ahead and put all the answers down to all the questions because you thought that that's what you needed to do, then stay consistent. That's not going to hurt you. And in fact, if you really want to take away the fear, then just do it again, because then you at least have put yourself in a position where you've got peace of mind that you followed through on it again. Okay, hope that helps. Again, I wish I could step into that seat. I just don't know what you put down the year before as far as what's going on there. So I hope that helps you. We are almost at that hour, folks. It's 7:57. Let's see here. What do I need when I call the school to verify the school has received the FAFSA? Well, it's real simple. You need to have your student's name, probably their social security number, their date of birth. Those types of things are likely what they're going to ask for. It is possible, and I hope this is not the case, that financial office may not talk to you, parent, because remember, it is your student's CSS profile, and it's their FSA, or I'm sorry, their FAFSA. And so you just need to know that it might be one of those situations. And you say here, I'm the non-custodial parent and did not fill it out. Oh, well, that's even another story. But again, hopefully they're going to talk to you. I can't guarantee you that, but that would be my best recommendation, is that you actually go ahead and do that. Okay, well, we're wrapping up here real quick. I hope this has been helpful, folks. We've covered a ton. I mean, I don't know if you realize that we've covered 79 questions that came up tonight. That's a lot. But I hope it's been helpful. It's one of those situations. This is such a stressful time for you. And please continue to come to these open forums. Also know that we're going to have some other great webinars that are going to be coming up here soon, dealing with appeals. Also, talking about how you're going to ultimately choose and pay for college, those types of things. And whenever you're stuck, don't forget that you always have the ability to upgrade from either the free version to the Scholar version, which gives you full access to the software, and or up to the valedictorian, which gives you not only the software for a full year, but also a 1-hour consultation with somebody like me or any of our other College Aid Pro experts. And then if you're a younger family trying to navigate this whole process, don't forget that we also have a thing called the White Glove program, which is all about having or helping you with every aspect of the process, including completing your financial aid forms, or with you. By the way, we complete those and then review it with you so that you can submit them on time. Also, working through you picking colleges, dealing with the appeals process, walking you through that, as well as dealing with the college funding plan. But again, it's been great being with you this evening. And I hope this has been helpful. I wish you all the very, very best as you continue down this process, and good luck with the college process for your sons and daughters. Take care, everybody.